Buckle up for a jaw-dropping tale of justice that'll leave you speechless. A first-class ticket to a dream future. A brilliant young black woman on the verge of changing her life forever. That was Amara Jones, standing at the gate, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. But standing between her and her destiny was a flight attendant named Karen Miller, a woman whose smile was as thin as her patience and whose mind was clouded with a lifetime of bitter prejudice. In one hateful, humiliating act, Karen would try to tear Amara's dream apart, right there on the jet bridge. Want to know how one phone call turned this injustice into a corporate firestorm? Stick with Dark Stories to find out. Little did Karen know, Amara's mother was about to make a single phone call, a call that would unleash a firestorm of corporate karma so swift and so devastating, it would not only cost Karen her job but dismantle her entire life. The air at John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 hummed with a unique kind of energy, a symphony of rolling suitcases, garbled announcements, and 1,000 different conversations in a dozen languages. It was an orchestra of departure and arrival, of hellos and goodbyes. For 19-year-old Amara Jones, it was the overture to the most important performance of her life. Clutched in her hand was a boarding pass that felt heavier than its flimsy paper stock. It was her golden ticket, not to a chocolate factory, but to something far sweeter, a final round interview for the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship at the University of Oxford. The flight was Global Wings Air Flight 104, direct from New York to London Heathrow. The seat number, printed in bold black ink, was 2A, first class. Amara took a deep, steadying breath, the recycled airport air failing to calm the frantic butterflies in her stomach. She was a world away from her neighborhood in Queens, a place of love and community, but not of privilege. This ticket, this entire trip, was the culmination of years of relentless work, late nights spent under the glow of a desk lamp, weekends sacrificed to debate club and volunteer work, and a GPA so high it seemed like a typo. She had poured every ounce of her being into earning this opportunity. Her mother, Brenda, had insisted on the first-class ticket. "You are going to show up rested, prepared, and feeling like the queen you are," Brenda had said, her voice firm with a pride that always made Amara feel like she could conquer the world. "You walk onto that plane, and you own that space because you've earned it." Brenda Jones was a force of nature, a single mother who had worked her way up from a receptionist to become the indispensable executive assistant to the CEO of Innovate Corp., a technology giant with a sprawling global footprint. She understood the unspoken rules of power and presentation, and she was determined that her daughter would never be made to feel small. Amara looked at her reflection in the polished glass of a closed duty-free shop. She saw a young woman with bright, intelligent eyes, her hair styled in neat box braids that cascaded over her shoulders. She wore a smart but comfortable blazer over a simple top and dark jeans, an outfit that said serious student without being overly formal for a long-haul flight. She looked, she thought, like herself. The pre-boarding announcement for Global Wings Air Flight 104 crackled to life. "We would now like to invite our first-class passengers, as well as our Diamond Medallion members, to begin boarding at Gate B24. This was it. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. She smoothed down her blazer, pulled her carry-on roller bag behind her, and approached the podium. There were two airline employees at the gate. One was a young man, Mark, with a bored expression, who was scanning passports. The other was a woman in her late 40s, whose name tag read Karen. She had a helmet of sprayed blonde hair, sharp, bird-like features, and a lipstick smile that didn't reach her cold, assessing eyes. She was the lead flight attendant, orchestrating the boarding process with an air of weary authority. As Amara stepped forward, Karen's eyes flickered over her, from her braids to her jeans, and a subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurred in her posture. Her smile tightened. "Good evening," Amara said politely, holding out her boarding pass and passport. Mark reached for it, but Karen intercepted, plucking the documents from Amara's hand. "First class?" Karen asked, her voice laced with a saccharine tone that felt more like an accusation than a question. She examined the ticket, turning it over as if searching for a flaw. "Yes, seat 2A, Amara confirmed, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman's gaze was making her skin prickle. Karen looked from the ticket back to Amara's face. "Right," she said slowly, drawing the word out. She tapped the boarding pass with a long, manicured nail. "And how did you come by this ticket?" Amara blinked, taken aback. My mom bought it for me." Your mom, Karen repeated, her eyes doing another slow, insulting sweep of Amara's attire. That's nice of her. The implication hung thick and poisonous in the air. People like you don't belong here. This must be a mistake. Or worse. Mark, the other agent, shifted uncomfortably. A few other first-class passengers, mostly older white businessmen in expensive suits, were starting to queue behind Amara. One of them, a kind-faced man in his 60s, cleared his throat. Amara's cheeks burned with a heat that had nothing to do with the stuffy terminal. She knew this look. She had felt it before in high-end stores, in certain classrooms, in moments where her presence defied someone's narrow expectations. It was the soft, insidious sting of prejudice. Is there a problem with my ticket? Amara asked, her voice firmer now, her mother's words echoing in her mind, you own that space. Karen gave a short, humorless laugh. We've just had a lot of issues recently. Fraudulent tickets, mileage scams. It's amazing what some people will do to get a seat they didn't pay for. Her eyes were locked on Amara's, shining with a strange, vindictive glee. She was enjoying this. My ticket is not fraudulent, Amara stated, her voice dropping to a low, cold register. It was purchased with a credit card, same as everyone else's. May I have it back, please? I'd like to board my flight. The directness of Amara's tone seemed to provoke Karen. The flimsy veneer of customer service cracked. Her smile vanished completely, replaced by a rigid mask of authority. I'll need to verify this, Karen declared, her voice now sharp and loud enough for the other passengers to hear clearly. You'll need to step aside and wait while I confirm the payment method. Wait? The flight is boarding now, Amara protested, a knot of panic tightening in her chest. This couldn't be happening. You can see my name, Amara Jones. It matches my passport. What more do you need to verify? That's for me to decide, miss, Karen snapped. She turned to the other agent. Mark, handle the rest of the line. Then, with a final triumphant glare at Amara, Karen turned and walked away from the podium, heading toward the jet bridge entrance, Amara's golden ticket still pinched between her fingers. She hadn't just questioned Amara, she had confiscated her key to the future, leaving her standing alone, exposed, and humiliated in front of a line of strangers. The orchestra of the airport had faded, replaced by the deafening silence of a single hateful act. A wall of invisible ice seemed to form around Amara. The handful of passengers who had been behind her were now being processed by Mark, who steadfastly avoided her gaze. They shuffled past, some with averted eyes, others with expressions of mild curiosity, one or two with a flicker of pity. No one said a word. No one intervened. To them, she was just part of a brief, awkward delay. To Amara, the world was tilting on its axis. The kind-faced businessman who had cleared his throat earlier, a man named Mr. Peterson, paused as he handed his ticket to Mark. He glanced at Amara, then at the retreating back of Karen. That seemed a bit unnecessary, he murmured to Mark, his voice low but clear. Mark just shrugged, his face a careful blank. Standard procedure sometimes. She'll sort it out. Mr. Peterson gave Amara a sympathetic look before proceeding down the jet bridge, leaving her utterly alone. Humiliation was a hot, creeping tide starting in her stomach and spreading through her limbs, making them feel heavy and useless. Her mind raced. What was Karen doing? Calling a credit card company? It made no sense. The ticket was issued, the seat assigned. The system would have flagged any payment issue long before this moment. This wasn't procedure. This was a power trip fueled by a prejudice so blatant it was breathtaking. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The rest of the first-class cabin boarded. The priority business class line began to move. Soon, the call for general boarding would come. Every shuffling footstep, every zip of a bag, was a reminder that the plane was filling up. And her seat, seat 2A, remained empty while its rightful occupant was being held hostage by a gate agent's bigotry. The panic that had been a tight knot was now a raging inferno in her chest. This wasn't just about a comfortable seat. The flight was over 9 hours long. Her mother had bought the ticket so she could sleep, study her notes one last time, and arrive in London clear-headed and ready. If she missed this flight, she would miss the interview. There were no other direct flights that would get her there in time. This single act of malice could derail everything she had worked for since she was a little girl, dreaming of ancient libraries and Gothic spires. She walked tentatively back to the podium. Mark was now busy scanning the boarding passes of a family with young children. "Excuse me," Amara said, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts. "Can you please tell me where she went? How long is this going to take?" Mark glanced up, his expression a mixture of annoyance and discomfort. "Look, she's the lead flight attendant. She's probably on the plane with the captain right now, verifying things. You have to wait." "Wait for what?" Amara's voice rose, desperation sharpening its edge. "For her to decide that I'm worthy of my own ticket? The flight is going to leave." "Please keep your voice down, miss," Mark said, his tone shifting to one of official warning. Tears of frustration and rage pricked at Amara's eyes. She would not cry. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She thought of her mother again. What would Brenda do? Brenda would not stand here and passively wait for injustice to resolve itself. Brenda would fight. Amara looked down the jet bridge. She could see the open door of the aircraft. Karen was nowhere in sight. She had likely vanished into the plane's galley, probably laughing about it with the other crew members, holding Amara's ticket like a trophy. And then, the final brutal twist of the knife. Karen reappeared from the jet bridge. She walked, not toward Amara, but to the center of the gate area. She held up a small microphone. Her voice, amplified and chillingly calm, echoed through the waiting area. "Ladies and gentlemen, a final boarding announcement for Global Wings Air Flight 104 to London Heathrow. We have one remaining seat in our first-class cabin, Seat 2A, which has become available due to a last-minute cancellation." A collective gasp went through Amara's body. It was as if the air had been punched out of her lungs. Cancellation? She was standing right here. Karen continued, a smug, predatory smile playing on her lips as her eyes found Amara in the crowd. "We are pleased to offer an upgrade to one of our Diamond Medallion members. Will passenger Thomas Richards please approach the podium?" A man in the business class line looked up, surprised and delighted. "That's me." This was a nightmare, a surreal, slow-motion horror film where she was the only one who knew the script. Karen hadn't been verifying the ticket. She had been engineering a way to give it to someone else. She had looked at Amara Jones, a young black woman, and decided she was not credible, not worthy. She had erased her. As the ecstatic Mr. Richards scurried to the desk, Karen took Amara's original boarding pass and, with a theatrical flourish, tore it cleanly in half. She dropped the two pieces into the bin beside her. The sound of the ripping paper was as loud as a gunshot in Amara's ears. It was a declaration of victory. The ice around Amara shattered, replaced by a white-hot fury. This was no longer just about prejudice. This was theft. This was an assault on her future. She strode forward, past the stunned onlookers, planting herself directly in front of the podium. Her voice, when it came out, was no longer pleading. It was a low, dangerous growl. "What did you just do?" Karen looked at her, feigning surprise. "I'm sorry, do you have a question?" "General boarding will commence in a moment." "You tore up my boarding pass," Amara said, her voice shaking with rage. "You gave my seat away." "My name is Amara Jones. My seat was 2A. You know that." Karen's face hardened. The act was over. The ticket was flagged in our system as fraudulent. The seat was released. End of story. "Now, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the boarding area, or I will be forced to call airport security." "You are a liar," Amara spat, the words tasting like acid. "Security!" Karen called out, her voice sharp. The dam broke. The tears she had fought so hard to hold back now streamed down her face, not tears of sadness, but of pure, undiluted rage. Her dream was dissolving in front of her eyes, destroyed by the casual cruelty of a woman in a uniform. Her body trembled, a chaotic mix of adrenaline and despair. She backed away from the desk, fumbling in her purse for her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock it. There was only one person she could call, one person who could understand the tangled knot of injustice, racism, and corporate power at play. She found the contact and pressed the button. As the phone began to ring, thousands of miles away in a different world, she whispered the one word that was both a plea and a promise of retribution: Mom. Brenda Jones was in the middle of reviewing a quarterly logistics report in her home office. Her workspace was a testament to her personality, meticulously organized, efficient, and radiating a quiet power. On her desk, next to a sleek, high-end monitor displaying complex spreadsheets, sat a single-framed photograph of a beaming Amara in her high school graduation cap and gown. It was the centerpiece of her universe. When her phone buzzed with an incoming call from my star, Amara, Brenda's face instantly softened. She smiled, picturing Amara settling into her first-class seat, perhaps already sipping an orange juice and feeling the thrill of the adventure ahead. "Hey, baby girl," she answered, her voice warm and cheerful. "Aren't you supposed to have your phone in airplane mode by now? Don't get in trouble with the flight attendants before you even take off." The sound that came back through the receiver was not the excited chatter she expected. It was a choked sob, a desperate gasp for air that made every maternal alarm in Brenda's body shriek into high alert. "Amara, what's wrong? Talk to me." "Mom," Amara's voice was a ragged whisper, fractured by tears and fury. They won't let me on the plane." Brenda sat bolt upright in her chair. The spreadsheet, the report, the entire world outside of her daughter's voice vanished. "What are you talking about? Did you miss the flight?" "No, I'm here at the gate. There's a woman, a flight attendant named Karen. She took my ticket, Mom. She said it was fraudulent." Brenda's mind, trained to process information and identify problems with lightning speed, began to work. "Fraudulent? That's impossible. I bought it myself with the corporate Amex. There's no fraud. Put her on the phone." "I can't," Amara cried, and the story came tumbling out in a torrent of pain and humiliation, the condescending questions, the public accusation, the confiscation of her ticket, and the final, unbelievable act of tearing it in half and giving her seat away. "She called security on me, Mom. She said she was going to have me removed from the gate. I don't know what to do. The flight is going to leave, and my interview." Brenda listened, her expression transforming from concern to a cold, crystalline fury. The warmth in her eyes froze over, replaced by the steely glint of a warrior preparing for battle. She recognized the pattern instantly. It was the same ugly prejudice she had fought against her entire life in boardrooms and corner offices, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways the world tried to tell black women they didn't belong. And it was happening to her child. They had picked the wrong child and the wrong mother. "Amara, listen to me very carefully," Brenda said, her voice now devoid of any emotion except for a chilling, absolute calm. It was the voice she used when a multi-million-dollar deal was on the line, the voice that made CEOs stop and listen. "Stop crying. I want you to take a deep breath. Do you hear me?" Amara sniffled on the other end. "Yes." "Good. I want you to find a place to sit where you can see the gate. Don't talk to anyone. Don't argue with them. Just sit, and you watch that gate. Do not move. Do you understand?" "But, Mom, the flight." "I will handle the flight," Brenda stated, her tone leaving no room for doubt. It wasn't a reassurance, it was a fact. "What was the airline again?" "Global Wings Air," Amara said. "Global Wings Air," Brenda repeated, typing the name into her computer's search bar. "And the flight attendant's name is Karen. Karen Miller. It was on her name tag. Karen Miller. Gate B24. JFK to Heathrow," Brenda recited, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Okay, baby. I'm on it. Just sit tight and wait for my call. I love you." "I love you, too, Mom," Amara whispered. Brenda hung up. For a single moment, she closed her eyes and let the raw, protective rage wash over her. They had made her daughter cry. They had humiliated her. They had threatened her future. A cold promise formed in her heart: by the time she was done, the name Karen Miller would be a cautionary tale in the Global Wings Air Employee Handbook. But emotion was a luxury. Action was a necessity. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead. Calling the general customer service line was a fool's errand. She would get lost in a labyrinth of automated menus and sympathetic but powerless agents. You don't solve a problem at the bottom. You solve it from the top down. Her company, Innovate Corp., was one of the largest technology firms in the world. They had thousands of employees flying millions of miles every single month. Their corporate travel account was a river of gold for whatever airline they chose to partner with. For the last 3 years, that airline had been Global Wings Air. Brenda opened her secure corporate contact database. She didn't search for customer service. She typed in Global Wings Air. A list of names populated the screen. She scrolled past the account managers and sales representatives until she found the name she was looking for: Robert Sterling, Vice President of Corporate Accounts. His direct office line and his personal cell phone number were listed right there. He was the man whose multi-million-dollar bonus was directly tied to keeping Innovate Corp's business. Brenda had met him twice at corporate functions. He was a man who understood the language of money and power. She picked up her phone and dialed his personal cell. It was well after business hours, but she knew he would answer a call originating from a top-level Innovate Corp number. He picked up on the second ring, his voice professionally smooth. Robert Sterling. Brenda took a slow, deliberate breath. The time for emotion was over. It was time for business. Mr. Sterling, this is Brenda Jones calling. I'm the executive assistant to Michael Vance at Innovate Corporation. There was a slight pause on the other end as Robert's brain instantly accessed the importance of the name. Michael Vance was the CEO. Brenda Jones was his gatekeeper, a woman with immense institutional power. Miss Jones, Robert's voice was warmer now, more attentive. Of course, a pleasure to hear from you. What can I do for you this evening? I hope there isn't a problem. Oh, there is a problem, Robert, Brenda said, her voice as calm and sharp as a shard of glass. A very significant one, and it's about to have a direct impact on Innovate Corp's 8-figure annual travel account with your airline. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Brenda could almost hear the gears turning in Robert Sterling's head, the rapid calculation of risk, the dawning horror of a crisis in the making. An 8-figure account wasn't just a client, it was a cornerstone of his entire division. Losing it would be a professional catastrophe. Miss Jones. Brenda, he stammered, his smooth corporate veneer cracking. Please tell me what's happened. I'm sure we can sort this out immediately. Brenda let the silence hang for another beat, allowing the weight of her words to fully land. She was not a hysterical mother. She was a corporate power broker, and she was leveraging that power with surgical precision. My daughter, Amara Jones, is currently at JFK Terminal 4, Gate B24, Brenda began, her tone factual and devoid of hysterics, which only made it more menacing. She was scheduled to be on your flight 104 to London in Seat 2A. She is flying to the UK for her final interview for the Rhodes Scholarship, an opportunity I'm sure you can appreciate is rather important. Of course, absolutely, Robert said quickly. Your lead flight attendant at that gate, a woman named Karen Miller, refused her boarding. She accused my daughter, a 19-year-old honor student, of carrying a fraudulent ticket, I might add, that was purchased on our corporate American Express card, the same one we use to book tens of thousands of flights with you a year. She heard a sharp intake of breath on Robert's end. Miss Miller then confiscated my daughter's boarding pass and passport in front of a crowd of people, Brenda continued, her voice like ice. After making my daughter wait and causing her immense public humiliation, she then announced to the gate that Seat 2A had become available, gave it away to another passenger, and tore up my daughter's boarding pass. She then threatened to call security when my daughter understandably objected. As we speak, Flight 104 is preparing for departure with my daughter on the ground and her future in jeopardy because of the unprofessional, discriminatory, and frankly disgusting behavior of your employee. Every word was a hammer blow, discriminatory, unprofessional, disgusting. These were trigger words in the corporate world, words that spelled lawsuits, PR nightmares, and lost revenue. I am speechless, Miss Jones, Robert finally managed, his voice strained. This is completely unacceptable. It is against every policy, every standard of service we have at Global Wings Air. I am so sorry for the distress this has caused your daughter and you. Sorry, Robert, a solution is what I require, Brenda said coldly. Innovate Corp has a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior from our partners. Our annual contract review with Global Wings is in 2 months. I will be advising Mr. Vance to begin accepting proposals from your competitors tomorrow morning. I'm sure Delta or United would be thrilled to have our business. That was the kill shot, the explicit threat, the transformation of a customer service complaint into a full-blown corporate crisis. No, please, that won't be necessary, Robert said, naked panic now coloring his voice. Brenda, I give you my word, I will fix this right now. What is the flight status? Brenda glanced at the live tracker she had pulled up on her screen. Boarding is complete. The jet bridge is still attached, but the doors are likely closed. Not for long, Robert vowed. Do not hang up. I am patching in the JFK station manager this second. You will stay on the line with me until your daughter is on that plane. Brenda heard a series of clicks, then the harried, slightly annoyed voice of a woman. Rodriguez, this is Sylvia Rodriguez, JFK station manager. This is Robert Sterling, VP of Corporate Accounts. Robert's voice was no longer panicked, it was thunderous, the sound of a boss about to unleash hell on a subordinate. I am on the line with Brenda Jones from Innovate Corp, our largest corporate client in North America, and you have a 5-alarm fire at gate B24 that you are going to put out immediately. The station manager's tone shifted instantly from annoyed to alarmed. Mr. Sterling, I wasn't aware of any issues. Well, you are now, Robert barked. Flight 104 to Heathrow. There is a passenger named Amara Jones, ticketed in first-class seat 2A, who was denied boarding by your lead flight attendant, Karen Miller. I am told Miss Miller accused the passenger of fraud, humiliated her, and gave her seat away. Is any of this ringing a bell, Sylvia? There was a frantic sound of typing. One moment, sir. I see the original booking, and I see a note here from the gate. Seat 2A released, passenger no-show. That can't be right. She is not a no-show, Robert, Brenda interjected. She is standing at your gate. Your employee tore up her ticket. Now, here is what you are going to do, Robert continued. You are going to get on your radio, and you are going to tell the captain of Flight 104 to hold that aircraft at the gate. You will not let that plane push back. Then, you are going to walk to gate B24. You are going to find Miss Miller. You are going to find Miss Jones, and you are going to fix this. Amara Jones will be on that flight in her assigned seat, and you will do it with the most profound apology this airline has ever issued. Is that crystal clear? Yes, Mr. Sterling, crystal clear, Sylvia Rodriguez said, her voice tight with stress. And Sylvia, Robert added, his voice dropping to a deadly serious whisper, find out exactly what happened. I want a full report on my desk in an hour. The employment of the people involved depends on it. Now go. Brenda listened, a grim satisfaction settling over her. The gears of power were turning. The colossal weight of corporate machinery was now grinding into motion, all aimed at one gate, one flight, and one overzealous flight attendant named Karen Miller. Brenda, are you still there? Robert asked, his voice returning to a more conciliatory tone. I'm here, Robert, she said. I am so profoundly sorry. The station manager is on her way. She will find your daughter and personally escort her onto the aircraft. Please call Amara and tell her to look for a woman named Sylvia Rodriguez. She will take care of everything. I'll do that, Brenda said. And Robert, thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. The pleasure is all ours, Brenda, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. We value your business more than you know. I know exactly how much you value it, Robert, Brenda replied softly, then ended the call. She immediately dialed Amara. Her daughter picked up on the first ring. "Mom, what's happening?" "A woman named Sylvia Rodriguez, the station manager, is coming to find you right now," Brenda said, her voice warm again. "She is going to fix everything, baby girl. You are getting on that plane." Sylvia Rodriguez moved through the terminal like a storm front. As the highest-ranking manager on duty at JFK for Global Wings Air, she was used to handling chaos, weather delays, mechanical issues, irate passengers. But a call from a furious vice president with their largest corporate client on the other line was a Category 5 hurricane she had never encountered. Her career was flashing before her eyes. She spoke into her walkie-talkie as she speedwalked toward Concourse B. "All stations, this is Rodriguez. Hold Flight 104 at Gate B24. I repeat, do not push back Flight 104. The gate is not closed. Awaiting a passenger." The pilot's voice crackled back, laced with confusion. "Tower, this is Global 104. We're fully boarded and buttoned up. What's the hold-up?" "Stand by, Captain," Sylvia snapped back, not breaking her stride. "Managerial hold." She arrived at Gate B24, her face a grim mask. The area was mostly empty now, save for a few stragglers and the gate agents tidying up. She saw him first, Mark, the younger agent, looking nervous. And then she saw her, Karen Miller, standing near the podium, looking insufferably pleased with herself, sipping from a bottle of water. And across from them, sitting alone in a row of empty chairs, was a young black woman with tear-streaked cheeks, clutching her phone like a lifeline. It didn't take a genius to piece the scene together. "Karen, Mark, my office now," Sylvia's voice cut through the quiet hum of the gate area. She didn't yell, but the command was absolute. Karen Miller turned, her expression of self-satisfaction quickly morphing into one of confusion. "Sylvia, what's going on? We're all wrapped up here. Flight's ready to go." "The flight is not going anywhere," Sylvia said, her eyes boring into Karen. "And you and I have a serious problem. Where is the passenger for Seat 2A? Karen gestured dismissively with her water bottle toward Amara. "Oh, her. I handled it. The ticket was a fraud. It was a no-show, so I upgraded one of our diamond medallions. Great for customer loyalty." She smiled, expecting praise. Sylvia felt a wave of nausea. This was worse than she imagined. The woman was bragging about it. "You did what?" Sylvia's voice was dangerously low. Before Karen could answer, Sylvia turned and walked directly over to Amara, her entire demeanor softening. "Are you Amara Jones?" Amara looked up, her eyes wide and wary. She nodded. "Yes. My name is Sylvia Rodriguez. I am the station manager for Global Wings Air. On behalf of the entire airline, and from the bottom of my heart, I am so deeply, profoundly sorry for what you have just experienced." The apology was sincere, urgent, and filled with the gravity of the disaster she was trying to contain. "I have just gotten off the phone with our corporate vice president, who was on the line with your mother," Sylvia continued. "There has been a catastrophic error, and I am here to fix it. You will be getting on your flight. Please come with me." A flicker of hope, the first she'd felt in what seemed like a lifetime, ignited in Amara's chest. She stood up, her legs feeling shaky. Sylvia turned back to her two employees. Karen was staring, her mouth slightly agape, the color draining from her face. The mention of a vice president and Amara's mother in the same sentence had clearly set off alarms. Mark looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Karen," Sylvia said, her voice now hard as granite. "You told me the seat was released because of a fraudulent ticket. I want to know on what basis you made that determination." Karen sputtered, her arrogance faltering. "Well, the system, she didn't look like, it just seemed suspicious. My gut told me something was off." "Your gut?" Sylvia repeated the words with utter disbelief. "You denied a paying first-class passenger boarding, humiliated her in public, and gave away her seat based on your gut? Did you run the credit card? Did you check the PNR for any notes from reservations? Did you follow any procedure at all?" I was protecting the company's assets, Karen insisted, her voice growing shrill. We can't just let anyone walk into first class. The racial undertone was so thick and obvious it was suffocating. Anyone? Sylvia's face was a thundercloud. The only person you were protecting was your own prejudice, Sylvia said, her voice dropping to a furious whisper. The ticket was purchased by Innovate Corporation. Do you know who they are, Karen? They are our single largest client. Their CEO's executive assistant is this young lady's mother. The vice president of our airline just got off the phone with her. You haven't just insulted a passenger, you have jeopardized a $100 million a year contract. Karen Miller's face went completely white. The water bottle slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The full scope of her miscalculation, the sheer, terrifying magnitude of her mistake, was crashing down upon her. She had picked a fight with a foot soldier, not realizing she was backed by an entire army. Now, Sylvia commanded, turning to Mark, you get on the radio. Tell the purser in first class that you have a passenger for seat 2A and that Mr. Thomas Richards needs to be reseated in his original business class seat immediately. Apologize for the confusion. Mark scrambled to obey, his hands trembling as he grabbed the walkie-talkie. Sylvia then turned her full attention back to Karen, her face cold, her eyes merciless. You, hand me your airline ID and your crew credentials right now. Karen stared at her, horrified. What? Sylvia, it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. This was not a misunderstanding, Sylvia corrected her, her voice ringing with finality. This was a willful abuse of your authority. You are suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. You are not to set foot on this or any other Global Wings aircraft. Surrender your ID. With a trembling hand, Karen unclipped the ID from her uniform. Her entire body shook. The plastic card that represented her career, her identity, her small sliver of power over the world was now being demanded of her in front of the very girl she had tried to victimize. Sylvia took the ID without a word and pocketed it. She then turned back to Amara, her expression once again warm and apologetic. Amara, let me personally escort you onto the plane. I'll carry your bag. No, that's okay, Amara said softly, her voice still. I can take it. As Sylvia led a stunned Amara toward the jet bridge, they walked directly past Karen Miller. Karen stood frozen, a statue of pure humiliation, her face a mask of disbelief and ruin. Her reign as the petty tyrant of Gate B-24 was over. The swift, brutal karma she had never seen coming had just arrived, and it was only the beginning. Walking down the jet bridge was a surreal experience for Amara. The narrow corridor, which minutes before had seemed like an impassable barrier, now felt like a victor's path. Sylvia Rodriguez walked beside her, radiating an aura of apologetic authority. When they reached the aircraft door, the purser, a man with a concerned expression, was waiting. Miss Rodriguez, we've been informed. Mr. Richards is back in his original seat. Seat 2A is ready for Miss Jones. Thank you, David, Sylvia said. She then turned to Amara, her eyes filled with genuine remorse. Again, Amara, I cannot apologize enough. If there is anything you need during this flight, anything at all, you let David know, and it will be taken care of. The entire in-flight entertainment system is comped, of course, and we've added 100,000 bonus miles to your account as a small gesture. Amara simply nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She stepped across the threshold into the quiet, hushed cabin of first class. It was her first time ever in such a luxurious space. The few passengers who were already seated glanced up. She saw Mr. Peterson, the kind-faced businessman, who gave her a small, encouraging smile and a nod, as if to say, I'm glad you made it. The man who had briefly been in her seat, Mr. Richards, looked flustered but avoided her gaze. David, the purser, led her to her seat. Welcome aboard, Miss Jones. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Orange juice, champagne? Just water, please, she whispered, sinking into the plush leather of seat 2A. As she settled in, she could see back through the open aircraft door to the gate area. She saw Sylvia Rodriguez talking to Mark, who was nodding vigorously, and she saw Karen Miller. Karen was no longer the proud, authoritative figure from before. She was slumped, her shoulders caved in. Her uniform, once a symbol of power, now looked like a costume she was no longer entitled to wear. As Amara watched, another airport official, this one in a security uniform, approached Karen. He spoke to her briefly, then gestured for her to follow him. He was escorting her away from the gate, away from the aircraft, away from the career she had just spectacularly incinerated. Karen glanced one last time toward the plane, and for a fleeting moment, her eyes met Amara's. There was no anger in Karen's gaze now, only a hollow, desolate shock, the look of someone whose world had crumbled to dust in the space of 10 minutes. Then she turned and was gone. The aircraft door closed with a satisfying final thud. The engines began to whine, and soon the plane was pushing back. Amara leaned her head against the cool window, watching the lights of JFK shrink as they taxied toward the runway. She had won. Her mother had won. Justice, swift and decisive, had been served. The tears that came to her eyes now were not of rage or humiliation, but of overwhelming relief. She took out her phone, connected to the newly free Wi-Fi, and sent a simple text to her mother, "I'm on the plane, in my seat. Thank you, Mom. I love you more than words can say." The reply came back almost instantly, "The world tried to knock you down today, baby girl, and you're flying over it. I love you. Now go get that scholarship." Back at the gate, the karma for Karen Miller was only just beginning its brutal descent. Being escorted from the gate was the first public cut. The long, silent walk with the security officer to Sylvia Rodriguez's office was the bleeding. Inside the small, sterile office, Sylvia sat behind her desk, the confiscated ID placed squarely in front of her. Robert Sterling was on speakerphone, his voice a low, cold rumble. "Karen Miller," Sylvia began formally, "as we discussed at the gate, you are suspended without pay, effective immediately. A full human resources investigation will commence tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You will be expected to be available for it." "It was a judgment call," Karen pleaded, her voice cracking. "I have a 22-year spotless record with this airline." "Your record is not spotless anymore, Karen," Robert Sterling's voice cut in from the speaker, making her jump. "It now has a permanent, unremovable black mark of gross misconduct, willful discrimination, and causing a Class A crisis with our most valuable corporate partner." "You didn't make a judgment call. You made a career-ending blunder based on what I can only assume is deep-seated bigotry." "That's not true," she cried. "I treat all my passengers the same." "Do you?" Robert challenged. "Do you regularly accuse white businessmen in suits of carrying fraudulent tickets? Do you confiscate their boarding passes and give their seats away based on a gut feeling? Or do you reserve that special treatment for young black women who you feel don't look the part? The investigation will include a review of all passenger complaints filed against you for the last 5 years. I wonder what patterns we'll find." Karen's face fell. There had been other complaints, a sarcastic comment here, a dismissive wave there, small aggressions she had always gotten away with. She never imagined they would one day be compiled into a dossier against her. Furthermore, Robert continued, his voice utterly merciless, "Mr. Peterson, another first-class passenger in seat 4B, has already sent an email to our corporate office detailing the event he witnessed. He described your behavior as appalling and overtly racist. He will be a witness in our investigation. The young man you upgraded, Mr. Richards, has also filed a complaint about the embarrassing situation you put him in. You don't have a leg to stand on." The walls were closing in. Every avenue of defense was being systematically dismantled. "So what now?" Karen whispered, her entire body trembling. "Now, you go home," Sylvia said, her face impassive. "Your access to all company property and systems has been revoked. You will be contacted by HR. Do not attempt to contact any other Global Wings employees. An escort will see you out of the terminal." It was the corporate equivalent of an execution. Stripped of her credentials, her dignity, and her job, Karen Miller was let out of the office. As she walked through the now bustling terminal, she was no longer a figure of authority. She was just a woman in a uniform she would never wear again, her face pale and streaked with tears, a ghost in the airport that had once been her kingdom. The hard part, she thought, was over. She was wrong. The karma was just getting started. For Amara, the flight to London was transformative. Freed from the trauma of the gate, she allowed herself to sink into the quiet luxury her mother had wanted for her. She slept for 6 straight hours in the lie-flat bed, a deep and restorative sleep. When she awoke, she ate a delicious meal, reviewed her notes one last time, and landed at Heathrow, feeling refreshed, focused, and imbued with a new, unshakable sense of self-worth. The world had thrown its ugliest prejudice at her, and with her mother's help, she had stared it down and won. Her interview at Oxford was less of a grilling and more of a conversation. She spoke with passion about her studies, with intelligence about global affairs, and when one of the panelists asked her to describe a recent challenge she had overcome, she paused. Then, without naming names or airlines, she told them a story about confronting an unexpected and unjust barrier and how it had reinforced her belief in fighting for one's rightful place in the world. Her answer was met with thoughtful, impressed nods. 2 weeks later, she received a thick envelope with an Oxford University letterhead. She had done it. She was a Rhodes Scholar. Her story, in a sanitized corporate version, became a case study for Global Wings Air. They overhauled their diversity and inclusion training, making the Amara Jones incident a mandatory module for all customer-facing employees. The airline sent a formal written apology to the Jones family, along with a significant travel voucher, which Brenda and Amara promptly donated to the United Negro College Fund. They never wanted to fly with them again. Innovate Corp, at Brenda's quiet insistence, moved 30% of their travel contract to a competitor as a tangible sign of their displeasure, a $30 million penalty for Karen Miller's actions. For Karen, however, the landing was not so gentle. The fall was a dizzying, terrifying spiral into a life she no longer recognized. The HR investigation was a formality. With testimony from Amara, provided by Brenda, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Richards, Mark the gate agent, who told the truth to save his own job, and the damning review of her past complaints, she was officially terminated for cause within 48 hours. The letter was cold and clinical, no severance, no benefits extension, just a final paycheck. Her identity was inextricably linked to her job. For 22 years, she had been Karen Miller, international flight attendant. It gave her status. It made her feel important. When she told people what she did, they were impressed. Now she was just Karen, unemployed. She tried to apply to other major airlines, but the aviation industry is a small, insular world. The story of the agent who cost Global Wings a fortune and was fired for discrimination had spread like wildfire. No one would touch her. She was blacklisted. Her financial situation, already precarious, collapsed. She had lived slightly beyond her means for years, funding a lifestyle of suburban comfort on credit cards and a home equity loan. Her job, with its travel perks and steady salary, was the only thing keeping the house of cards from falling. Without it, the interest payments became insurmountable. The collection calls started, first, polite reminders, then insistent demands, finally aggressive threats. 6 months after she tore up Amara's ticket, a for sale sign was hammered into her front lawn. The shame was a physical presence, a constant companion. Her neighbors, who once waved hello, now offered tight, pitying smiles and hurried away. Her friends, many of whom were fellow airline employees, grew distant. Her problem was a contamination they didn't want to catch. Her bitterness, a poison they didn't want to drink. She was forced to sell the house for less than it was worth just to escape the debt. She moved into a small, dreary apartment complex by the highway. The constant roar of traffic, a mocking reminder of the airplane she used to fly. Her downward spiral continued. She took a job as a cashier at a 24-hour convenience store to make ends meet. The irony was corrosive. She, who had once held the power to grant or deny passage to the skies, was now scanning lottery tickets and bags of chips for tired truck drivers and night shift workers. The uniform was a cheap polyester polo shirt that was always too hot. Her name tag just said Karen. One night, about a year after the incident, a young black woman came to her register to buy a bottle of water and a pack of gum. She was bright-eyed, wearing a university sweatshirt, and she paid with a debit card. As Karen handed her the change, the young woman smiled kindly and said, "Have a good night." In that simple, polite interaction, Karen saw the ghost of Amara Jones. She saw the person she could have been if she had just scanned the ticket, offered a professional smile, and said, "Enjoy your flight." She was overwhelmed by the crushing weight of her own choices. The sneer, the accusation, the tearing of the ticket, it had all felt so powerful in the moment, a righteous assertion of her place in the world. Now she saw it for what it was, a pathetic, desperate act of a deeply unhappy person. And it had cost her everything, her home, her career, her friends, her pride. Standing under the flickering fluorescent lights of the convenience store, smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant, Karen Miller finally understood the true meaning of karma. It wasn't a dramatic, fiery retribution. It was the slow, grinding, and inescapable consequence of living with the person you had chosen to be. She had snatched a ticket to a young woman's dream, and in doing so, had torn up the ticket to her own life. And there was no one to call, no one to fix it, no one to blame but herself. That's the incredible story of how a single act of prejudice at an airport gate set off a chain reaction that reached the highest levels of corporate power. It's a powerful reminder that the world is smaller than you think, and you never know who you're dealing with. Amara Jones was on her way to greatness, and one person's bigotry was not going to stand in her way, especially when she had a powerful, intelligent mother like Brenda in her corner. Karen Miller learned the hard way that the authority of a uniform is nothing compared to the authority of character, and that karma, especially in our interconnected world, can be devastatingly swift and brutally efficient. If this story of justice and consequence resonated with you, and if you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Dark Stories for more true stories of drama, justice, and real-life karma.